morning. How is everyone doing today? Give you guys some time to get set up here. Join the call. Let's start with prayer. Lord, again, thank you for another week. Thank you for another week inside your word. Thank you for the teachings. Thank you for the lessons. God, I hope that you hear the prayers of those that need it most. That you answer prayers for those who need it most. And we continue on the path you have for us. And Lord, today, let these words and these teachings show us who you truly are. And give us the revelations that we need from your words. In Jesus' name. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm so excited to be here with you. So I have some exciting news, and that news is as I have been going over the words and reading the Bible with you, if you haven't noticed, we're going to need to extend this call because there's a lot to cover, and I don't want to miss anything. Now, if you are unable to stay for the whole hour, I totally understand. It's usually Monday mornings, so I totally get it. But we're going to be extending it so we can really dive in and get all the words in that we need and everything it is that we need to cover. And last week, we were in the thick of it of Genesis, okay? And I just want to show you how much we've read, because I think it's important to understand that there's a lot that's happened and we haven't even gone that far. So we've only done this much and we have all of this left. So we ended last week and we're talking about Jacob and where Jacob came from and what Jacob is going through. And he had just reconciled with his brother Esau, and the revenge and him coming back to the land. And so we're going to just dive right in, and we're going to start here on 37. So Genesis 37, that's where we're going to start today. And just a little recap from the 36 and 35. 35 is really talking about Jacob's return. That's kind of where we ended last week, talking about his return to Bethel and the things that were happening and him starting again. One of the verses on here, it's 35:11, says, when God said, I am El Shaddai, God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. You will become a great nation of every many nation. God will be among your descendants, and I will give you in the land I once gave to Abraham and Isaac. Yes, I will give it to you and your descendants after you. Then God went up from the place where he had spoken to Jacob. Jacob set up a stone pillar to mark the place where God had spoken to him. Then he poured wine over it as an offering to God and anointed the pillar with olive oil. And Jacob named this place Bethel, which means house of God, because God has spoken to him there. I think it's important that we understand and we listen to the things that are happening, the prophecies that are being spoken, and the anointing that's being done, and everything that is transpiring, even through transgressions. And a lot of these people really not listening, really not listening, and kind of questioning a lot of different things. And so as we begin in 37, and we talked in 36, we talked about the descendants of Esau and where they originally came from, which that was your homework, was to read those chapters so you understood who came from who, from where, and why, which then leads us to Joseph. And we all know Joseph is pretty important when it comes to the Bible. And so he is here in the beginning. of Genesis. So I believe that it's very, very important to understand his story thoroughly. And 37, we're going to begin. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended to his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. "Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. "Listen, I've had another dream," he said. "The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me." This time he told the dream to his father as well to his brothers, but his father scolded him. "What kind of dream is that?" he asked. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you?" But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to the pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them." "I'm ready to go," Joseph replied. "Go and see your brothers and the flocks are getting along," Jacob said. "Then come back and bring me a report." So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from his home in the valley of Hebron. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. "What are you looking for?" he said. "I'm looking for my brothers," Joseph replied. "Do you know where they are pasturing their sheep?" "Yes," the man told him. "They have moved on from here, but I heard them say, 'Let's go on to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him." Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming towards them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites came, who were midnight traders, came by, Joseph's brother pulled him out of the cistern and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. When he discovered that Joseph was missing, he tore his clothes in grief. Then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe in it for its blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message, "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it is my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him. Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. I will go to my grave mourning for my son, he said, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the midnight traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. So, thoughts of what's going on here, right? And I want to point out a couple things. Couple things is they said, oh, look, here comes the dreamer. Now, how many of you have been persecuted by your family? How many of you have been told by your family, like, oh, that'll never happen, or oh, that's not going to go on? And I think about that when I'm thinking about Joseph. Hold on one second. And I think about how he was coming to them with these dreams and these ideas, right? And he was already dreaming of this type of leadership that was coming to him in his dreams, right? And that's before he truly understood things. I mean, you have to understand he was 17. So it's this kid, right, that has these dreams. And it's really important to point out that I feel that it's very similar in the things that I think all of us go through, even as young kids, things that can be pushed down and diminished, and things that, any dreams, hopes, aspirations are just pushed down because others don't like you. And I mean, in this instance, his brothers hated him. And when you really think about it, yeah, those were his brothers, those were his half brothers. So you relate it to everyday world now. You may have stepbrothers, you may have stepsisters, you may have half brothers. I know I have half brothers. And there's this hate in them. Now, Reuben, one of the brothers, to point out that I think it's important that, there was he had some guilt there and he didn't want that to happen. He was like, okay, like, I'm not going to tell them what I'm doing, but I'm going to go save him. And, that can be either he had guilt, or he didn't want to get in trouble, or he didn't want to, I guess you could say, have his sidewalk be dirty, and he could have, his hands are clean because he did the right thing in a sense. So, I think it's an important lesson in teaching inside of this about that, because now he's sold into slavery, and for 20 pieces of silver. Just, okay, here, we'll buy him. So Joseph's now in Egypt. So chapter 38. About this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hirah. Then he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he marries her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and they named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Onan. And she gave birth to a third son, and she named him Shelah. At this time of Shelah's birth, they were living in Kezib. In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, go and marry Tamar, as our law requires of the brother of a man who has died. You must produce an heir for your brother. But Onan was not willing to have a child who would be not of his own heir. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But the Lord considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So the Lord took Onan's life too. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son Shelah is old enough to marry you. But Judah didn't really intend to do this because he was afraid Shelah would also die, like his two brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. Some years later, Judah's wife died. After the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Hira and the Aldamite went to the Timnah to supervise the shearing of sheep. Someone told Tamar, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. So she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with the veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road at the entrance to the village of Enim, which is the road on to Timnah. Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute, since she had covered her face. So he stopped and propositioned her. "Let me have sex with you," he said, not realizing that she was his own daughter-in-law. "How much will you pay to have sex with me?" Tamar asked. "I'll send you a young goat from my flock," Judah promised. "But what will you give me to guarantee that you'll send the goat?" "What kind of guarantee do you want?" he replied. She said, "Leave me your identification seal and its cord and the walking stick you are carrying." So Judah gave them to her. Then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. Afterwards, she went home, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothing as usual. Later, Judah asked his friend Hira the Aldamite to take the young goat to the woman and to pick up the things he had given her as his guarantee. But Hira couldn't find her. So he asked the men who lived there, "Where can I find the shrine prostitute who is sitting beside the road at the entrance of Enim?" "We've never had a shrine prostitute here," they replied. So Hira returned to Judah and told him, I couldn't find her anywhere, and the men of the village claimed they've never had a shrine prostitute there. "Then let her keep the things I gave her," Judah said. "I sent the young goat as we agreed, but you couldn't find her. We'd be a laughing stock of the village if we went back to look for her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has acted like a prostitute, and now, because of this, she's pregnant. Bring her out and let her be burned," Judah demanded. But as they were making their way out to kill her, she sent this message to her father-in-law. "The man who owns these things made me pregnant. Look closely, whose seal and cord and walking stick are these?" Judah recognized them immediately and said, "She is more righteous than I am, because I didn't arrange for her to marry my son Shelah." And Judah never slept with Tamar again. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, it was discovered that she was carrying twins. While she was in labor, one of the babies reached out his hand. The midwife grabbed it and tied a scarlet string around the child's wrist, announcing, "This one came out first." But then he pulled back his hand, and out came his brother. "What?" the midwife exclaimed. "How did you break out first?" So he was named Perez. Then the baby was with the scarlet string on his wrist was born, and he was named Zahir. I think it's really interesting to have that section in between what is going on with Joseph, obviously with the brothers. And it just goes to show you the kind of things that were going on during this time and the rules that people had to follow. So in 39, now we're back to Joseph. It's almost, you know what, and I'm just going to say this, and listen, I love all of this. I think this is amazing, but you know what it reminds me of a little bit? It kind of reminds me of, and you may have grown up on this. I might be too young to be talking about it, but it kind of reminds me of like the soap opera shows that are on TV. It's kind of like you have one story that's going on, and then it pans, and then it's a completely different story that's going on. That's kind of how I feel this is how it's being written, and it's there's lessons and teachings and all of it, not like the soap operas, but it's interesting as you're reading it. So when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Photar, an Egyptian officer. Photar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Photar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased him. And as soon as he made Joseph his personal attendant, from that day, Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property. The Lord began to bless Photar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Photar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man, and Photiphara's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded, but Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in this entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around when he went to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." Joseph tore himself away, but left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. When she saw that she was holding his cloak he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. "Look," she said, "my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away. But he left his cloak behind with me." She kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. Then she told him the story. "That Hebrew slave you brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me," she said. "But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me." Photiphar was furious when he heard about his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into prison where the king's prisoners were held. And there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all these prisoners over everything that had happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything, and the Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. Okay. Again, here we are. And poor Joseph, honestly. If you really think about it, he's being called to all these areas without truly, he knew his brothers hated him, but he knew his father loved him. And it's like he's enslaved, he's falsely accused, then he's imprisoned. But what's important is that God was with him. And I think that's something that we can all look at, because when I read this, it's trials and tribulations, right? He's going through this, like, okay, his brothers hated him, he was sold as a slave. Okay, that's a trial. Like, you're like, okay, like this, but he makes the best of it, right? Seeking God through all of it. And then this woman, right? His master's wife, like, don't even get me started on her. Thankfully, her name's not in here, right? Call her out personally. Accuses him of like, oh, he was going to do this. No, we know what you were doing. And Joseph does too. And the thing is God does as well. And he's like, okay, here's another trial. Like, I'm going to prison for something I didn't do. How many times have you heard that, right? But God was with him. And even in prison, he became, a favorite to the warden in there, and he did well and he did good. And he was showing his true character. And this just puts into perspective the character of Joseph, how amazing his character was, and how regardless of what he is put through, he knows that God is with him and he is going to do his very, very best. And it's a very good lesson, I think, for each and every one of us, no matter what it is that we're going through, right? That you can be promoted by God in any circumstance, any scenario, any trial. And just because it's hard doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong, because God is with you. And it says it over and over again. 40. Sometime later, Pharaoh's, I always get that mixed up. You would think, me having the name that I have, that I wouldn't. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker offended their royal master. Pharaoh became angry with these two officials, and he put them in prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. They remained in prison for quite some time, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who looked after them. While they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. "Why do you look so worried today?" he asked them. And they replied, "We both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean." "Interpreting dreams is God's business," Joseph replied. "Go ahead and tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream first. "In my dream," he said, "I saw a grapevine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." "This is what the dream means," Joseph said. "The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as a chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor when these things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastry stacked on my head. The top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head." "This is what the dream means," Joseph told him. "The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. Then the birds will come and peck away at your flesh." Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all his officials and staff. He summoned his chief cupbearer and chief baker to join the other officials. He then restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. I'm going to keep going and then we'll recap. 2 years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he had been standing on the bank of the Nile River. In this dream, he saw 7 flat, healthy cows come up out of the river and began grazing in the marsh grass. Then he saw 7 more cows come up from behind the Nile, but these were scrawny and thin. These cows stood beside the fat cows on the riverbank. Then the scrawny, thin cows ate the 7 healthy fat cows. At this point in his dream, Pharaoh woke up, but he fell asleep again and had a second dream. This time, he saw 7 heads of grain, plump and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were shriveled and withered by the east wind. Then these thin heads swallowed up the 7 plump, well-formed heads. Then Pharaoh woke up again and realized it was a dream. The next morning, Pharaoh was disturbed by his dream, so he called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told of his dreams, not one of them could tell him what it meant. Finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. "Today, I have been reminded of my failure," he told Pharaoh. "Some time ago, you were angry with the chief baker and me, and you imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of the guard. One night, the chief baker and I had a dream. Each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in the prison who was also a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he predicted. I was restored to my position as cupbearer, and the chief bearer was executed and impaled on a pole." Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once, and he was quickly brought from the prison, and he shaved and changed his clothes. He went in and stood before Pharaoh. When Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream last night, and no one here can tell me what it means, but I have heard that when you hear about a dream, you can interpret it." "It is beyond my power to do this," Joseph replied, "but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease." So Pharaoh told Joseph about his dream. "In my dream," he said, "I was standing on the bank of the Nile River, and I had seen 7 fat, healthy cows come out of the river and begin grazing in the marsh. Then I saw 7 sick-looking cows, scrawny and thin, come up after them. I've never seen such sorry-looking animals in all the land of Egypt. These thin, scrawny cows ate the 7 fat cows. But afterward, you wouldn't have known it, for these cows were still as thin and scrawny as before. Then I woke up. In my dream, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were blighted, shriveled, and withered by the east wind. And the shriveled head swallowed the 7 healthy. And I told these dreams to the magicians, but no one could tell me what they meant. Joseph responded, both of Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows and the 7 healthy heads of grain both represent 7 years of prosperity. The 7 thin, scrawny cows that came up later and the 7 thin heads of grain withered by the east wind represent 7 years of famine. This will happen just as I described it, for God has revealed to Pharaoh in advance what he was about to do. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land, but afterward there'll be 7 years of famine, so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt. Famine will destroy the land. This famine will be so severe that even the memory of the good years will be erased. As for having 2 similar dreams, it means that these events have been decreed by God, and he will soon make them happen. Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of this entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced on those good years that are just ahead and bring it to the storehouses. Store it away and guard it so there will be food in the cities. That way there'll be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. Sorry, I looked at the word famine and I was like, I think it's famine. Lots of interesting things. And I would love to hear, if anybody is still here with me, what you think Joseph's gift is. I mean, kind of know, right? And he even said it before with the prisoners, like, this is, interpreting dreams is God's business. That's his business. That's how he handles it. And I just find it really interesting that he's dream of interpretation. Yep, that's a good one. It's, I would love to have a Joseph, because sometimes I dream, and how many of us dream and want to know what the interpretation is. And I love that it's included in here because, the Pharaoh had 2 dreams that were very similar but different, but they meant the same thing. And in here, Joseph is made the ruler of Egypt. Right as soon as, this was 2 full years later. The cupbearer finally came to, only because of a conversation and a dream that Pharaoh had. So now, as we can see here, Joseph's suggestions were well received. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find anyone like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one is as intelligent or wise as you. You will be in charge of my court and all my people, and they will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on the throne, will have a higher rank than yours. So now he's set free because of his gifts. And how many of us have gifts and talents that maybe we've put away because of the doubt, and so many people putting doubt into our heads, very similar to Joseph and his brothers, selling him, telling him he's a dreamer. And Joseph never gave up on his gifts and talents. He continued to use his gifts and talents and even leadership to get him to where he is. Now, did it take time? Now, it doesn't really say how long he was in prison. I mean, we know that he sat there again for another 2 years after he helped those 2, even though the other one didn't really have the best ending. But he still remained faithful and true to his gifts and his talents, even through it. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in the fine linen and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval. When Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, this is a really long name, Zephath-Panah, and it means God speaks and lives. And I most likely butchered that. So just putting it out there. These names are super hard, but it means God speaks and lives. He also gave him a wife whose name was Asnan. She was the daughter of Potera, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So there's our timeline. He was 17, sold, he got out, and he was 30. So, I mean, we're talking 13 years, longer than that, 23. Yeah, that was a long time to be locked up because you were sold. So, as predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grains like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. During this time, before the first of the famine years, 2 sons were born to Joseph and his wife. The daughter of Potera, the priest of On, Joseph married his older son Messiah, for he said, God has made me forget all of my troubles and everyone in my father's family. Joseph named his second son Ephraim, for he said, God has made me fruitful in this land of grief. The last 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried out to the Pharaoh for food, he told them, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. So with severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouse and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land. And people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. Now, here it's coming back around. Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. When Jacob heard that the grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, why are you standing around looking at one another? I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough to keep us alive. Otherwise, we'll die. So Joseph's 10 older brothers, went down to Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with them, for fear some harm might come to him. So Jacob's sons arrived in Egypt along with others to buy food, for the famine was in Canaan as well. Since Joseph was governor of all of Egypt and in charge of selling the grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Where are you from? He demanded. From the land of Canaan, they replied. We have come to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. And he remembered the dreams he had had about them many years before. He said to them, you are spies. You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become. No, my lord, they exclaimed. Your servants have simply come to buy food. We are all brothers, members of the same family. We are all honest men, sir. We are not spies. Yes, you are, Joseph insisted. You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become. Sir, they said, there are actually 12 of us. We are your servants. We are all brothers, sons of a man living in the land of Canaan. Our youngest brother is back there with our father right now, and one of our brothers is no longer with us. But Joseph insisted, as I said, you are spies. This is how I will test your story. I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you will never leave Egypt unless your younger brother comes here. One of you must go and get him. I'll keep the rest of you here in prison, and then we'll find out whether or not your story is true. By the life of Pharaoh, it turns out that you don't have a younger brother, then I'll know you are spies. So Joseph put them all in prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, I am a God-fearing man. If you do as I say, you will live. If you are really honest men, choose one of your brothers to remain in prison. The rest of you may go home with grain for your starving family. But you must bring your youngest brother back to me. This will prove that you're telling the truth, and you will not die." To this they agreed. Speaking amongst themselves, they said, "Clearly we are being punished because of what we did to Joseph long ago. We saw his anguish when he pleaded for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why we're in trouble." "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy?" Reuben asked. "But you wouldn't listen, and now we have to answer for his blood." Of course, they didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he had been speaking to them through an interpreter. Now he turned away from them and began to weep. When he regained his composure, he spoke up to them again. Then he chose Simon from among them, and he had tied him up right before their eyes. Joseph then ordered his servants to fill the men's sacks with grain, but also give secret instructions to return each brother's payment at the top of his sack. He also gave them supplies for the journey, so the brothers loaded their donkeys with their grain and headed home. But when they stopped for the night and one of them opened his sack to get grain for his donkey, he found his money in the top. "Look," he exclaimed to the brothers, "my money has been returned. It's here in the sack." Then their hearts sank. Trembling, they said to each other, "What has God done to us?" When the brothers came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened. "The man who is the governor of the land spoke very harshly to us. He accused us of being spies, scouting the land. But we said we are honest men, not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One brother is no longer with us, and the youngest is as at home with our father in the land of Canaan." Then the man who is the governor of the land told us, "This is how we'll find out if you are honest. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take the grain for your starving families and go home. But you must bring your youngest brother back to me. Then I'll know you are honest men and not spies. Then I will give you back your brother, and you may trade freely in the land." As they emptied out their sacks, there in each man's sack was the bag of money he had paid for the grain. The brothers and their father were terrified when they saw the bags of money. Jacob exclaimed, "You are robbing me of my children. Joseph is gone, Simon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin too. Everything is going against me." Then Reuben said to his father, "You may kill 2 of my sons if I don't bring Benjamin back to you. I'll be responsible for him, and I promise to bring him back." But Jacob replied, "My son will not go down with you. His brother Joseph is dead, and he is all I have left. If anything should happen to him on your journey, you would send this grieving white-haired man to his grave." It's kind of sad. It's sad, and then it's not, right? Because Joseph's dream came true. They did bow to him. And I don't think it was in the same way that he was truly envisioning, right? But then Joseph wanted to bless them as well. And, his dad, poor Jacob, he's like, "Oh my gosh, like all these horrible things are happening." And it reminds me that we don't always understand why God is doing something until the end, right? We don't always understand why we have to go through what we're going through, the trials and the tribulations, and there's still goodness in it, right? There's still goodness in that. And behind the scenes, without knowing how things happen. I mean, this isn't just coincidences. It's not just a coincidence that Reuben was like, "Hey, I told y'all. I told you guys." They don't recognize him. Then they're given all their money plus the grain so their family wouldn't starve, because Joseph, that's still his family. And to me, it's almost like I'm sure it'll happen as we continue here, but it's almost a form of forgiveness. He saw that, and he was crying because he was just like, "Oh, like this is my family," right? Regardless of what they did to him. So the brothers returned to Egypt, but the famine continued to rage in the land of Canaan. When the grain they had bought from Egypt was almost gone, Jacob said to his sons, "Go back and buy us a little more." But Judah said, "The man was serious when he warned us. You won't see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you send Benjamin with us, We will go down and buy more food. But if you don't let Benjamin go, we won't go either. Remember, the man said, you won't see my face again unless your brother is with you. Why were you so cruel to me? Jacob moaned. Why did you tell him you had another brother? The man kept asking us questions about our family. He asked, is your father still alive? Do you have another brother? So we answered his questions. How could we know he would say, bring your brother down here? Judah said to his father, send the boy with me, and he will be on the way. Otherwise, we will all die of starvation, and not only we, but you and our little ones. I personally guarantee his safety. You may hold me responsible if I don't bring him back. Then let me bear the blame forever. If we hadn't wasted all this time, we could have gone and returned twice by now. So his father, Jacob, finally said to them, if it can't be avoided, then at least do this. Pack your bags with the best products of the land. Take them down to the man as gifts: balm, honey, gum, aromatic resin, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Also, take double the money that was put back in your sacks, as it was probably someone's mistake. Then take your brother and go back to the man. May God Almighty give you mercy as you go before the man, so that he will release Simon and let Benjamin return. But if I must lose my children, so be it. So the men packed up Jacob's gifts and doubled the money and headed off with Benjamin. They finally arrived in Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the manager of the household, these men will eat with me this noon. Take them inside the palace, then go slaughter an animal and prepare a big feast. So the man did as Joseph told him and took them into Joseph's palace. Their brothers were terrified when they saw that they were being taken into Joseph's house. It's because of the money somehow put in our sacks just in time when we were here, they said. He plans to pretend that we stole it. Then he'll seize us, make us slaves, and take our donkeys. The brothers approached the manager of Joseph's household and spoke to him. Sir, we came to Egypt once before to buy food, but we were returning home. We stopped for the night and opened our sacks. Then we discovered that each of man's money, the exact amount paid, was in the top of his sack. Here it is. We have brought it back with us. We also have additional money to buy more food. We have no idea who put the money in our sacks. Relax, don't be afraid, the household manager told him. Your God, the God of your father, must put this treasure into your sacks. I know I received your payment. Then he released Simon and brought him out to them. The manager then led the men into Joseph's palace. He gave them water to wash their feet and provided food for their donkeys. They were told they'd be eating there, so they prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon. When Joseph came home and they gave him the gifts they had bought him, they bowed low to the ground before him. After greeting, he asked, how is your father, the old man you speak about? Is he still alive? Yes, they replied. Our father, your servant, is alive and well, and they bowed low again. Then Joseph looked at his brother Benjamin, the son of his own mother. Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? Joseph said. May God be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph hurried from the room because he was overcome with emotion for his brother. He went into his private room where he broke down and wept. After washing his face, he came out, keeping himself under control. He ordered, bring out the food. The waiter served Joseph at his own table, and his brothers were served at a separate table. The Egyptians who ate with Joseph sat at their own table because Egyptians despise Hebrews and refused to eat with them. Joseph told each of his brothers where to sit, and to their amazement, he seated them according to their age, from oldest to youngest. And Joseph filled their plates with food from his own table, giving Benjamin 5 times as much as he gave the others. So they feasted and drank freely with him. How crazy is that story? And we still have more to go. I pause because there's so much in there, and there's so much goodness in there, and there's so much to learn from that the emotion and the feeling that he had for his family, even though the things that were done to him, but the success that he had. And, he gave them instruction. He was like, okay, do this and come back. If not, don't come back. And he's asking these questions. You would think, and somewhere along the way, someone would be like, I know, this seems kind of, the discernment, right? You'd be like, mm, this is interesting, right? This is an interesting thing. And I think one of the biggest things, because I am going to stop here today, we'll pick up and finish the rest of Genesis. And we are going to go into the book of Job going into next week. But God doesn't waste pain. So everything that Joseph had gone through wasn't wasted. And he's not excusing what happened, right? He's not excusing, the betrayal and the things that, he went through. But God doesn't waste the pain. And it's all about repurposing that pain. And how can it be repurposed? And I like to think of each and every one of our lives as similar, right? Any pain or anything that you've experienced in your life that has caused, immense pain to you, it doesn't go for nothing. Now, it can if you choose to. It can be for nothing if you choose to. It truly, truly can. And I really feel for Jacob in here, because he has so much sadness because he's lost, Joseph, and, he's got these boys, and you could just imagine the life that they were living, the 12 of them, right? And he just has this sadness, but it's not all for naught. And so I think this is a great lesson to learn, that you can still have forgiveness and kindness in your heart, even though you're successful. And, and it is about a lesson, right? But he's being the man that God has created him to be. And there's no fault in the way that Joseph is handling this. I do believe that there is a lot of grace and compassion that Joseph is showing them. And, oh man, it's good. It's really, really good. We're going to finish all the way to 45. So we'll do 44 and 45 because he reveals his identity. And I'd love to leave us with that today. So 44. When his brothers were ready to leave, Joseph gave these instructions to his palace manager. Fill each of their sacks with as much grain as they can carry, and put each man's money back into his sack. Then put my personal silver cup at the top of the youngest brother's sack, along with the money for his grain. So the manager did as Joseph instructed. The brothers were up at dawn and were sent on their journeys with their loaded donkeys. But when they had gone only a short distance and were barely out of the city, Joseph said to his palace manager, "Chase after them and stop them. When you catch up with them, ask them, 'Why have you repaid my kindness with such evil? Why have you stolen my master's silver cup, which he uses to predict the future? What a wicked thing you have done.'" When the palace manager caught up with the men, he spoke to them as if he had been instructed. "What are you talking about?" the brothers responded. "We are your servants, and we would never do such a thing. Didn't we return the money we found? We brought it back all the way from the land of Canaan. Why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If you find this cup with any of us, let that man die, and the rest of us, your Lord, will be his slaves." "That's fair," the man replied, "but the only one who stole the cup will be my slave. The rest of you will go free." They quickly took their sacks from their bags and their donkeys and opened them, and the palace manager searched the brothers' sacks from the oldest to the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. When the brothers saw this, they tore their clothes in despair. They were loaded. Then they loaded their donkeys again and returned to the city. Joseph was still in his palace when Judah and his brothers arrived, and they fell to the ground before him. "What have you done?" Joseph demanded. "Don't you know that a man like me can predict the future?" Judah answered, "O Lord, what can we say to you? How can we explain this? How can we prove our innocence? God is punishing us for our sins. We have all returned to be your slaves, all of us, not just our brother who took the cup and put it in his sack." "No," Joseph said, "I would never do such a thing. Only the man who stole the cup will be my slave. The rest of you may go back to your father in peace." When Judah stepped forward and said, "Please, my lord, let your servant say just one word to you. Please do not be angry with me, even though you are as powerful as Pharaoh himself. My lord, previously you asked us, your servants, do you have a father or a brother?" And he responded, "Yes, we have a father who is an old man, and his youngest son is a child of his old age. His full brother is dead, and he is alone. He is left to my mother's children, but his father loves him very much. And you said to us, 'Bring him here so I can see him with my own eyes.' But we said to you, 'The boy cannot leave his father, for his father would die.' But you told us, 'Unless your youngest brother comes with you, you'll never see my face again.' So we returned to your servant, our father, and told him what you'd said. And later he said, 'Go back again and buy us more food.' And you replied and said, 'Unless you let your youngest brother go with us, we'll never get to see this man's face or our youngest brother with us.' Then the father said to us, 'As you know, my wife had 2 sons, and one of them went away and never returned. Doubtless he was torn to pieces by some wild animal. I have never seen him since. Now, if you take this brother away from me, any harm comes to him, you will send him into a grieving white-haired man to his grave. And now, my lord, I cannot go back to my father without our boy. Our father's life is bound up in the boy's life. But if you see the boy is not with us, our father will die. We, your servants, will indeed be responsible for sending that grieving, white-haired man to his grave. I guaranteed to my father that I would take care of the boy, and I told him, if I don't bring him back to you, I will bear the blame forever. So please let me stay here as a slave instead of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. For how can I return to my father if the boy is not with me? I couldn't bear to see the anguish this would cause." 45. Joseph couldn't stand it any longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him, and the word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was there standing in front of them. "Please come closer," he said. So they came closer. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery into Egypt. But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged our land for the last 2 years will last 5 more, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive, to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who had made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace and the governor of all of Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over all the land of Egypt, so come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you will be near me with all of your children and grandchildren, your flocks and your herds, and everything you own. I will take care of you there. And there will still be 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise, you and your household and all your animals will starve." Then Joseph added, "Look, you can see for yourselves, so you can see my brother Benjamin, that I really am Joseph. Go tell my father of my honored position here in Egypt. Describe to him everything you have seen and bring my father here quickly." Weeping with joy, he embraced Benjamin, and Benjamin did the same. Then Joseph kissed each of his brothers and wept over them, and after that they began talking freely with him. The news soon reached Pharaoh's palace. "Joseph's brothers have arrived." Pharaoh and his officials were delighted to hear. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, this is what you must do. Load your pack animals and hurry back to the land of Canaan. Then get your father and all your families and return here. I will give you the very best land in Egypt, and you will eat from the very best the land produces." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, take wagons from the land to carry out your little children and your wives, and bring your father here. Don't worry about your personal belongings, for the best of all of the land in Egypt is yours." So the sons of Jacob did as they were told. Joseph provided them with wagons, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he gave them supplies for the journey, and each of them new clothes. But to Benjamin he gave 5 changes of clothing and 300 pieces of silver. He also sent his father 10 male donkeys loaded with the finest products of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other supplies he would need. So Joseph sent his brothers off, and as they left, he called after them, "Don't quarrel about don't quarrel about all along the way." And they left Egypt and returned to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. "Joseph is alive," they told him. "He is governor of all the land of Egypt." Jacob was stunned at the news. He couldn't believe it. But when they repeated to Jacob everything Joseph had told him, and when he saw the wagons Joseph sent to carry him, their father's spirits revived. Then Jacob exclaimed, "It must be true. My son Joseph is alive. I must go and see him before I die." It's such a beautiful, I'm going to end there. How beautiful is that? Such a beautiful telling of life. And I know that Joseph must have truly been like, okay, he couldn't keep up he couldn't keep up with it anymore. He just was like, okay, it's me. Like, I'm here. He just couldn't keep up with it anymore because they truly didn't understand. They truly didn't know why these things were happening. But the most powerful point is this. And this is something that I know that I have taken in part of my life. And I think it's important for us to truly focus on, is that it was God who sent me here, not you. It was God that made me go before you to preserve you, to save you, and to help you, even though you did all these things. You sold me and this happened, but look at me now. What a story of redemption and grace and love, forgiveness. And we'll talk about the rest of Joseph's story before we end Genesis and go into book of Job as we go into next week. But thank you for being here. I know it extended today. Thank you so much for, reading with me and listening. And I would love to hear what you got from this today. I think it's so powerful. Like I said, it's redemption and grace and love and forgiveness and so much amazingness, if that's even a word, with this, just with his, his story and what he did for his family despite. So have a beautiful, beautiful week. Thank you so much for being here with me. And I can't wait to see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.